Hello and welcome back to CapTech Trends. I'm your host today, Brian Bischoff. I'm excited to continue our conversations in the AI space that's continuing to evolve, and specifically today around Agentic AI. It's been getting a lot of attention in the marketplace. Today I have Jason Dods and Kevin Vaughan with us for this podcast. Kevin, you've been a frequent participant in the podcast. Jason, this is your first time, but welcome. Looking forward to the conversation today.
Looking forward to being here.
Yeah, and just a little bit of background, just so that from context, Jason, your background's more aligned to a long history with data analysis, sorts of engagements, and just your background in general. And Kevin, a very broad mix of both innovation and technology, and certainly innovation in the AI space. We're really looking forward to both of those perspectives shining through today. So. All right, well, let's get started, because Agentic AI is really something that's been, I feel like, getting more and more traction over the last year. I think over really the last 6 months, it's hard to flip on some sort of technology news or some sort of product launch and see that they're not talking about Agentic. But maybe if you could start really with just each of your perspectives on really what Agentic AI is and how it's really different from things we've seen in the past in this space.
Sure. Take it first. I think that the evolution that we've seen of AI over the past, call it 5 years or so, has really shown what we can do with generative models. And if we look at generative AI, large language models, ChatGPT as it first was coming out, what you see is a lot of sort of knowledge model, things that understand the world, things that you're able to speak to and get some of that knowledge back out, but it's a very transactional, I'm gonna do this, and this is the answer I get back. And what we see with Agentic AI is to start to use some of this generative AI power for reasoning and be able to then construct multi-step plans to accomplish a particular objective, and then use tools to actually act and have an impact out in the world, whether that tool is to go and retrieve information or to actually take action. Think about like customer service bots that you may have been able to answer questions that you would have about your policies or whatever before, and now you can already go ahead and start auto renewal processes and do that same thing conversationally. While at the same time, from a technical perspective, really the conversation structures that you had to set up before were very complex. Lots of, I need to kind of define all of the landscape of what's gonna happen. And now we're more back to, I need to define the objectives that I want, and my Agentic AI system can use the tools and the data that it's been empowered with to be able to accomplish those for me within some degree of guardrails.
I think for me, the concept of Agentic AI really comes down to specialization. Kevin, you just talked a lot about generalists becoming specialists and how do you build a network, but how do you create someone that is extremely specialized in performing one thing over and over and over again. If you look at that in today's workforce, like you spend a lot of money to go find somebody that's really talented in one thing in particular. We can take a lot of that capability that somebody would have as a specialist in my space, somebody that knows how to run an event. You're gonna hire someone at an event that knows how to run a food and beverage center. How do you go train an AI agent to understand, or a series of agents to understand how to run a food and beverage center that is part of a bigger whole of running an event, so that they can start working together, so that we can truly start specializing each of these agents to focus on one thing, know it better than anything else in your network, to be able to surface insights really fast. And I think for us, like in the sports and entertainment space, it's how do you surface insights faster so that you can give information at a higher level to the people making the live event take place? How do you surface that information faster so that humans can still make decisions?
Jason, you introduced at least one new concept in your opening description of what agentic is, and you talked about an agent. I don't want to make any assumptions that people understand that, because I know that certainly who you talk to can have a different perspective on what really an agent is. So what is an agent, and how does that contribute to this whole agentic conversation?
When I talk to clients, I really think of an agent as someone who is specialized in doing one thing really, really well. Whether that is go and get data from the open web, go get data from a system that's internal, or surface an insight. We're gonna go create an agent that does one thing really, really well. They're, in my mind, very task-oriented, where they're gonna go and execute against one thing, and if they don't need to execute, they're not going to be part of the system. But they are, same as you'd call into a call center agent, that call center agent, if you're calling about your credit card, is gonna help you resolve a credit card dispute. Same idea for AI is you call in and you're accessing this piece of a network that does one thing really well and can hand off the relevant pieces to the rest of their network to figure out how to solve problems for you.
I think that problem solving as well, like tying on to that, is the dynamic nature of it, and being able to figure out what would be applicable. What data do I need to actually go out and get to do this instead of having to pull everything, right? And do so autonomously. I think that's the big word everybody throws out is autonomy, and being able to do that, on the fly adjustments to whatever the scenario is.
I want to get really specific here because I feel like we're at a point where it's very easy to toss around some of these terms, and people could say we're building an agentic system or I built an agent that does this, when in reality maybe it's just calling an API of a system that's going retrieving information. So, like, how do we not abuse that term? What truly, does it have to have some sort of model built into it? Is it have to use generative? Like, what's your perspective on really what qualifies as an agent?
Agentic, I think, is a nice broader term that allows some degree of flexibility from, like, how does this thing actually run? How am I actually oriented? But that's, I think, naming and versioning are two of the biggest challenges that we have right now in the AI space.
I don't know that an agent is much different than an API, and that an API really is just getting data. I think the agentic portion of it being an agent means you can do more than just get and retrieve it. You might do one step and format it and pass it off to the next piece of your system. But you're doing more than just doing retrieval, like push and pull from a system. I think you have to be an agent, you have to do a little bit more than that.
Yeah, and I think when I look at it, there's a degree of variability in these agents that with some of the language models or other capabilities in AI that I think provides some flexibility. It's not just, I'm going to get these 3 inputs, I'm going to do this one output, right? Like, there's some concept of variability in there too, right?
And I think that's when you start building these networks of agents. I know we recently built one in sports that we're looking at agents that are using bespoke AI models, like even different generative models. So each agent along this entire network, some may use model A, some may use model B. Like, how do they work together to get to the best outcome? Some models are better at, for instance, doing math, and some are better at creating generative outcomes. How do we think about what each one is doing along the way to create the best outcome you're looking to drive in that specific scenario? I think that's where agents become more powerful than just hitting an endpoint on an API, is you can start doing more with the data than just straight retrieval.
I think the orchestration there, like that you're calling out, is one of the big pieces, right? Like, I can hire somebody that can do some sous chef prep work. I could hire somebody that's going to do fraud analysis. In both cases, I'm just hiring somebody. And so if we talk about agents sort of as employees, that description is going to be equally applicable. The level of effort that goes into each of those tasks, the level of training, knowledge is dramatically different, right? And even just the type and the domain. So I think it's fair just to have some confusion on the terminology because it is general terminology. And when you think about an agent being, as you said, very task specific, very honed in, it does feel like an API. And I think, from a technical perspective, I've had conversations where I'm laying out, okay, here's an architecture that you can use for an agent. Here's how you can deploy this. And they say, oh, this is service-oriented architecture. This is, circa 2000. And the reality is, yeah, if you're looking at it at an individual component, very much is, right? Why not fall back on, decades of engineering experience that shows how to put good systems into production at scale? But when you put them together and you start having their objectives overlap, right? And you start giving, this person's an expert at using these tools. This person's an expert at analyzing and insights. This person's an expert at talking about particular things, right? And now you can solve a problem that you never explicitly actually said, I need to solve. Right? You're using emergent behavior coming out of the combination of these agents to accomplish something that I think is really where people expect magic out of AI. I think that's where it starts to become magic. Most people aren't looking at that kind of thing yet, right? And so they're sort of maybe disappointed at this moment, but with the work you're doing in sports, we've done similar multi-agent systems in logistics that we've talked about before. It's the confluence of these different agents coming together that really, I think, makes that difference.
I think where you, or Brian, you started the conversation today is my background's a lot in data, Kevin, yours is a lot in building systems, is I think what AI enables us to do is, I don't have a background per se in going and developing APIs or getting data from endpoints the same way that you may when you're developing software. But what an agent allows me to do is go do all of that with English language. I can go and accelerate my ability to access that information and do something with it that I otherwise wouldn't have to build that network. So I can go from, I have an idea, to I have a full proof of concept at the end of the day within that 8-hour workday. I can go from end to end by myself without having to work with a team of 6 people to develop that prototype. Now, not saying that the team of 6 people wouldn't make a better product at the end of the day, but it at least helps you start thinking through what is possible faster than we did before.
Yeah, and I think I put each of you in your own little corners, one data, one systems at the very beginning, not intentionally to divide that, but I think we are seeing a very strong blend and overlap there from in that Venn diagram of really the skill sets in this space. Now, Kevin, you mentioned a couple of things in your description so far. You've talked about reasoning, the capability of these models to do reasoning. We've talked about orchestration, and when we talk about agentic, it's the concept of orchestrating a series of different tasks or agents to do things. When we talk about it from a broader CapTech Trends, in a previous podcast, we talked about just that being part of an automation story. Now companies are trying to build as much automation as possible. I guess, where are we right now? What's possible now? I love talking to you, Kevin, because you talk about really what's the next phase and what we should be working towards. But what's possible right now? What's the current landscape with these things? About what sort of use cases or maybe examples that you've seen that are working right now?
What is possible right now is more than enough for most people's needs. We talk about like AGI and ASI and things of what is the future going to go and what does universal basic income look like, in these sort of more, futuristic looking perspectives. But for tasks that I've got, especially things that, I've got a lot of training material on that I would be able to use to help in the development of agents for any kind of roles where, think about like high turnover kinds of scenarios. You've got a lot of documentation because you're bringing somebody on and you need them running very quickly, right? So again, going back to that employee hiring perspective, how long does it take to get the expertise needed to contribute at that particular level? So there are some state-of-the-art bleeding things where research papers are being written, but by and large, you may see PhD level knowledge being expressed through these world models, but you're not seeing like PhD level thought right yet. And so I tend to think of it as like, what's realistic? Like, what can we do? And I have no questions whatsoever. You're talking about a use case, and I look at that and I say, yeah, we can build that, no problem. And I can at least correlate it to several things that we've done. And I just know that that's going to be right down the center. And I think of things that are maybe more ambiguous, where there are some areas that we're not exactly sure how the systems might be able to handle particular levels of reasoning or particular types of complexity of scenarios, right? Think about like fraud detection, where I can try and pull everything into a traditional ML model and be able to see, is this transaction fraudulent or not? But I can also stick an agent on that and say, yes, I can do that for this one transaction, but I can also look for trends and patterns that are happening of suspicious activities, maybe across multiple channels, things that you would never have been able to train like a traditional model on and be able to retrieve all of that data and do that kind of inference.
So there's a lot of expectations or a lot of things that people probably need to do to start on this journey. You talked about just baseline knowledge, understanding what's possible so that we can get to a point of even just envisioning what to do with the data you have or what to do with the opportunity that's in front of you. Like, you need to have some creativity or understand what's possible, then have some creativity to march down that path. The governance of data, governance of the system, governance of the processes as you implement them also need to be there. What else, like as an engineer on a team, as a data analyst on a team, as a team leader of these programs that are starting to explore, like going down this path, what do they need to be concerned with?
You have to start somewhere and you have to be willing to accept change. I think there are 2 guarantees in life and I'll add a third. Everyone says death and taxes are the 2 guarantees, and I'll add a third that says technology will change. Like, if you're working with technology, it's going to change. And if you're not going to start now, you're never going to get started. You have to start somewhere and at least dip your toe into it and use an open model on the web. If you want to go a little bit further and you say, hey, I like the results, that's when you start paying for access to a private model. And you just take it little bit by little bit and know that the same as you'd have to update your instance of Salesforce when they upgrade from version 1 to version 2, you're going to have to do the same with your AI models. It's just going to be easier. So there still is work to be done, but it will be easier because they're trying to make it as simple as possible.
In this new agentic model, what are some of the best practices from a design of systems that you need to consider that maybe is different than where it has been in the last 5 years?
Best practice would be start small and add. So don't try to solve everything all at once. Solve one problem and then start layering the problems on. So call me a simpleton, but I like to think of things as Legos. You can't build a wall of Legos without starting from the first brick. So how do I identify what the first brick is? Let's go get that brick and then start layering on brick after brick after brick until I build my wall, build my car, build my sailboat. I mean, I think there's a Lego model now for the Eiffel Tower that's 5 feet tall. So like you got to start somewhere, and you can't start at the top, you got to start at the bottom. So what are the base components I need for this to work? The same as you'd go build an architectural system, 30, 40 years ago. How do you design a system from the components that you need to know work 100% of the time and then start adding capability on top of that one layer at a time?
Well, I think that's an important aspect because what we're seeing with our client, certainly what I'm in my conversations with clients seeing, is that people want to see value out of this as quickly as possible too. They don't want to invest a year and a half worth of time to get to something. They want to see how quickly we can get to proving this is really going to work and provide the value that we're anticipating. And that those smaller building blocks, I think, is a great venue to do that as well.
These small blocks coming together, yeah, I've got to start with one, but you don't ever look at one and go, yeah, that's going to be the Eiffel Tower. This is going to be great, right? Like it takes a while for that vision to sort of fully come into place.
I think you have to start with a vision of what you want to do, but you've got to start at the foundation. And you can't start at the top and work down if you're building the Eiffel Tower unless they've magically invented, anti-gravity eye bars. But
next year.
Okay, great, next year. But I think you've got to start somewhere. And I think that's the hard thing to realize. I mean, and everyone wants instant value out of AI. I've heard that every day for the past 6 months. But the reality is, if you're working with data and large systems, getting value day one is really, really, really hard. So you've got to start small and build on it. And I always try to say, let's go find one data set that you're interested in, and let's see what AI can do with it that you may not have thought is possible. And let's show you that ROI with one data set on day one. And then say, imagine if we did this with the next 500 data sets you had and then built a system that could work across all 500 of those. What's the power that you guys could unlock with your business, with in my case, a lot of sports leagues? What's the power you could unlock with your fan by bringing together these 500 seemingly disparate data sources if they were all working with a very, very tuned agent to understand every aspect of that data set to create value back at the end of the day for the people that are consuming your brand?
You have to have some creativity about how to pull all this together. And to your point, you got to start, right? And that's why you can't wait for these things to evolve and mature a little bit. I think they're at a mature state now to do these valuable use cases. A couple final questions here just as we wrap up. One, coming back to the way I put each of you in your corners, right? Jason from a data background, data perspective, Kevin from a systems integration engineering side of things. If you were speaking to somebody in that corner, how would you tell them to embrace this and get started? Like, where would you start to really get the knowledge and start to test out what can happen inside of agentic systems?
I'd start by asking a simple question of like, here's what I'm looking to do. Can you help me come up with an idea for how to solve it? And I think what's really great about these generative models is if you give it an idea, it can help you formulate an idea. And I mean, recently in the past 2 weeks, I had started with the idea for something else that I think we can do with one of our clients in sports. And I was like, well, this probably needs a business plan. And a business plan usually takes about a month to write. I wonder if I could do that faster if I used AI. And the answer is yes. I mean, you just have to ask it questions and have a conversation with it. And what's really kind of cool about AI is it learns you, it learns how you react to things. And over time, like these engineers that have built these large systems are really smart and they've done a really good job. So like credit to them. But the outcome is you're going to be able to like have more of a conversation with somebody that it's not just talking to yourself in a vacuum. You can ask AI to be critical of your thoughts. And you can get started with a new idea. How do I refine it? How do I come up with a wireframe for something that I don't have? So from the data side, like I use AI to help me generate the visualizations of an interactive system that I'd work with someone like Kevin to build, to say, here's what I think this could look like. Kevin, can you validate that this is worth building, or is this the right way to think about this? Like, let me give you something to look at rather than just say, here's this idea and have some words on a paper. I can give you something to actually tinker with that is low function, but it at least gets you started.
And I think what you're describing there is use it in your actual tasks, right? Don't even try to think about how do I build a system with it. If you're not using it to begin with, then how do you expect to be able to build a system that can use it as well, right? So getting that sort of practice in. I was along the lines of helping you think through, I think removing white space is basically what I think of it. I never start with a blank canvas anymore. If I'm getting ready to do a thing and I don't have any thoughts about it yet, I'm leaning to AI to begin with and say, here, let me see what a skeleton possibly looks like around this. What are the bones that I would need to be looking at or thinking about as I go to talk or design or whatever it is that I'm doing. But being able to then also contextualize that to me, right? Never mind, like, yes, we can implement memory and it can be able to recall things about me and all of this, but I can also just say, here are the things that I know. This is what I'm trying to do. This is what I'm trying to work through. Relate this back, help me correlate, right? Take this T skill set that you get and then just immediately be able to push a button to raise up any one of those other lower data points up to a skill set that you need.
One of the things I took away from both of your answers to that was, you have your baseline, you have your knowledge base of how you've built your entire career and everything you understand, but leverage AI to support how do you take this to the next level. I think that's just a similar, that's a mindset for anything in the era we're in right now, but certainly as you're evolving and trying to learn about agentic systems.
Expand your capabilities and be able to have conversations with people you didn't think you could have a conversation with before. Like, I could now have a conversation about the systems that Kevin's using at a level that I definitely couldn't a year ago, because I've been able to actually see it come to life through prototyping and just asking questions about how does this work? Why does this work? What's the general thought behind how this works? And we need to think about how we can use the new tools that are evolving as the world evolves around us to help our clients be successful. And I think AI is on the forefront of how we can do that for our clients. The beauty of AI there is I don't have to pick up the phone and call Kevin, not saying that I wouldn't like to do that, but he has other things to do. And he can't always answer those questions. And it gives you that very quick feedback on how you can think about getting started. I've heard this many times over in life is, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity.
Yes.
And if we all of us take our jobs today and just continue to do them tomorrow and the next day and the next day exactly as we are today, we're doing no good for ourselves, we're doing no good for our clients. We need to think about how we can use the new tools that are evolving as the world evolves around us to help our clients be successful. And I think AI is on the forefront of how we can do that for our clients.
In 30 seconds or less. You've been doing this for a while, right? You've been exploring this space, exploring agentic as things have evolved over the last year, 18 months, or maybe even longer. What are you learning about right now? What's next on your opportunity space?
So I tend to try to look at the periphery. You said earlier, looking towards what's coming next and what the sort of unrealistic world it looks like. So I find it helpful to know what they're not capable of yet and how you can mitigate against those things. Just from if I'm being brought use cases, I want to understand what's possible. I want to understand what are the challenges going to be, and I want to think through, like, how do we shape the solution then to either avoid those or just acknowledge, this is not really something that is realistic, and understanding in the same way that it's like operating in your circle of competence, right? I know what I know, and I know, and as soon as I start to get a little bit out over my skis, I know to raise my hand and say, hey, let me ask some people and get some advice here.
Jason, what are you looking at right now?
Definitely more of the personalization and contextualization, I think, is where I'm focused. We've been in the sports and entertainment space really focusing on the concept of the best experiences that we have are produced experiences. How can we give the people that are producing experiences for us, whether it's at a sporting event, whether it's an entertainment venue, how can we give them information to make my experience, your experience, Kevin's experience more personal and contextual to us faster? We have access to more of that. AI can distill it down into what is relevant to each of us and how can we put that in front of the people that are going to make it happen faster so that all of us walk away feeling we've gotten the most value and personalized experience for our dollar that we've spent.
Yeah, I think I'd go back to a comment each of you made earlier about previously, a lot of energy to build these large models, and if you just decompose that into various pieces and figure out all the different aspects of what a personalized experience might look like for Jason, be able to solve that in individual components, and then have an agentic solution that can compose all that and make variable decisions depending on the outputs of those agents. I think that's a very compelling use case. So I want to ask a question here around, each of you are very well versed on what's possible here. You understand the technology, you understand certain applications of it, but there's people you work with on a regular basis that in leadership positions or decision-making positions that maybe don't understand what's possible. How do you go about describing what's possible, convincing them of what's next and where we are in this whole ecosystem?
I've definitely started from a place of it's easier to show than tell. So I end up building a lot of demos for clients, for people in the C-suite positions that are looking for, why should I invest in this? It sounds really expensive and doesn't sound like it's going to give me any significant long-term value more than what I've already got people doing. Let me go build you a demonstration of what it can do, and I can do that in 3 days, and you have a team of 200 people doing this full time. If I can get to any semblance of what these people are doing with data I can find on the open web in 3 days, we should at least have another conversation.
That's an extremely powerful, if you can turn around these proof of concepts in that short period of time, then that's an extremely powerful position to be in to demonstrate these sorts of things. And I think that's a key takeaway for me, certainly, is that when you're thinking about these things, it doesn't take a long period of time to build these, certainly to demonstrate them. I mean, you got some governance and you have some things you got to figure out, but to prove it's possible, it doesn't take a whole lot.
Yeah, I think there's a rub there that we are always constantly dancing the line of between art of the possible and the reality of implementation. And so I think very frequently we'll build out POCs because seeing is believing, right? Definitely better to show than tell. And we see that time and time again with all of our conversations. And if you could show somebody, art of the possible definitely opens their eyes to, well, I can even at least talk about what might be realistic, even if that's not, right? But a lot of the times those POCs are sort of a golden path, right? I'm picking the right data, or I'm cherry picking the problem that I'm going to be exposing this to. I'm not really necessarily painting a full picture of what this would take. I go into production. I actually have to have an entirely different infrastructure in place versus running it locally or running it in some siloed environment. I've got to have all different security things in place and work with a lot of teams to get all of that. All of that data actually had real governance, or ideally it had real governance behind it. So where is that really supposed to be coming from? Is it fresh? How do I know it's good?
There's a lot of things that are part of the SDLC process you got to figure out.
Right.
I think we're talking about earlier just how do you capture the imagination of what's possible. Oftentimes I hear pushback or feedback around what I guess I'll call the inertia to get started, right? Overcoming that inertia to get started because people are fearful. They've got, my data house is in a mess. It's not in a great place. Like, it's just going to take too much. So how do you respond to that?
They already started. If they're working for you and you're not giving them AI capabilities, they've found that on their own. That's just what the usage data shows. That's what all the surveys show. It's a giant shadow IT world that's happening out there, and it's happening without the sort of concerns that we've talked through around governance and around verifiability and around traceability and responsible AI. And so you've got to start because you're already playing catch up. And you really want to make sure that it's being used with your business in the ways that you want it to be used. Another thing that you can do is to use Agentic AI to help you. So we've done some work using AI to help ingest your data in different ways and help you form that data fabric and really get those insights, help you curate that metadata so that you are able to interact with it better.
Well, thank you guys very, very much. Appreciate each of your perspectives. I know that we'll probably have some more of these conversations as we go forward in the future, but thanks for the time today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.